We are slaying monsters.
Don't let the ghosts and the ghouls disturb you, darling.
When Barack Obama pictures aliens, what aliens does he think there are? Does he see little gray aliens?
Probably, because Barack Obama, did you know that he was actually making a movie about Betty and Barney Hill?
No, it's part of his Netflix deal?
Yeah, he was producing a movie, and it seems like it's stalled right now. I don't know what's going on with it, but yeah, he was supposed to produce a Betty and Barney Hill movie.
That's super interesting. I mean, they were an interracial couple in the early 60s, and they were civil rights activists, so...
Yeah, and I think it was sort of that stance, that
Sure.
directive of being more about their civil rights activism. And it just so happened to be that this couple was also abducted by aliens. But it seems like Obama is really into aliens, though. You know, he tried to let it slip.
We're all into aliens. That's the thing. That's why it's so unifying. That's why we keep having congressional hearings about it. We've talked about this because it doesn't matter who you are. Everyone is interested in aliens. You can't get it. You can't get away from it.
But yeah, I think Obama probably pictures little gray aliens. It's a shame the little green men fell out of favor. I miss the days of little green aliens with big pointy ears.
I don't think of pointy ears. I think of I think of the alien from Futurama, but green. That's what I think of when I think of aliens.
Which alien from Futurama? The guy, isn't he green?
I think he's gray, isn't he?
Is he gray?
I think he's gray. And but also I also think what it is remember in the 90s the sort of iconified, and by iconified I mean computer icon, alien head that would be everywhere. It was that
was Alienware. That was a computer company. Yeah, and they used the gray alien head on everything. Yeah.
Katie, are you thinking of American Dad?
Am I thinking of American Dad?
Oh, American Dad, he has the gray alien buddy.
Yes.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I am thinking of American Dad.
Yes. Yeah.
I think of that guy. I kind of think of that, but green. That is what I still think of when I think of aliens. What do you all think of?
Oh, I do think of the gray alien because it seems like that's sort of eclipsed all the other alien mythos at this point. Any alien that we talk about now, they seem to be judged to be the gray alien. But with lips, we're not going to talk about it in this episode. We're going to talk about it in the next one. But the Allagash abductees claim that the aliens that they saw had beaks, which is interesting.
Okay.
Tiny little beaks. Yeah.
Tiny little beaks. Okay, EJ, what do you think aliens look like?
I don't know. I don't think about it a whole lot. I don't picture it a whole lot. And you guys have greatly influenced me with what you just said, so I can't really say. Maybe they're tall, skinny, and gray. But I don't know. I don't think about it.
Yeah. I mean, I'm not saying I sit around thinking about it. I'm just saying that when someone's aliens, I immediately think of a bulbous headed green creature with big black eyes. That's immediately what I think of. I don't think I've come out of the 50s is what I'm saying.
Is it wearing a silver tracksuit? Because that's the 50s aesthetic.
I don't really see the bottom. I just see the face.
Head. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think mine are naked.
Are they? They would be.
Yeah. I don't know if that says more about the aliens or about me. EJ, why don't you bring us in?
About you. We are slaying monsters. We got Maddie J over here.
I am not currently naked.
That's good. And we can verify that right now. That is true.
Yes.
We got Katie.
Hi.
And no comment, Katie. And I am EJ. Also, no comment. And we're going to talk about alien abductions again.
Yeah.
Allagash.
Yeah. Yeah. We're going to continue the story of the Allagash Abductions, and we're going to start to talk about the real aliens and also some of the history of alien abduction, which I don't think we've really covered in a whole lot of detail on the podcast yet. So this will be pretty cool. Well, in our last episode, 4 campers on the Allagash Wilderness Waterway experienced a bizarre incident. Brothers Jim and Jack Weiner and their friends Charlie Foltz and Chuck Rack were night fishing on Eagle Lake when they saw a strange pulsating light in the sky. They tried to signal to it, and then they fled as it chased them. But by the time they got back to the shore, that should have been about half an hour or so, their bonfire had completely burned out. And somehow they had lost 2 or 3 hours during that time that they were out there on the lake. Now, years went by after their strange fishing trip, and the Allagash Four continued to live their normal lives. Around 1980, Jim Weiner had what author Raymond Fowler describes as a home accident. He fell about 15 feet off a ladder and sustained a blow to his head. Despite the accident, Jim walked it off and considered himself lucky that it hadn't been any worse. It would take 2 years until he consulted a doctor about chest pains and numbness in his side. And during his examination at Beth Israel Hospital in Boston, he was diagnosed with a condition called temporolimbic epilepsy, or TLE. And he had likely been suffering that for the 2 years since his fall without realizing it.
So he's been having seizures?
Not exactly. So when you think of a seizure, you think of like somebody falling to the floor and kind of spasming, right?
There are different kinds of seizures, yeah.
Yeah, his were mental seizures. They were cognitive seizures.
Okay.
And
So-
that's what was like causing the numbness, because his brain was like seizing, basically.
Yeah, some misfires were happening inside his brain. So in TLE, the damage to the brain causes scarring on the temporal lobe. And so patients experience what we call focal aware seizures. I say we as if I'm experienced in this at all. But they're focal aware seizures. And during those events, patients will remain conscious and be aware of their surroundings, but experience sensory and emotional disturbances. Now, that most commonly manifests as feelings of deja vu and moments of panic or anxiety. When you suffer from this, they describe it like the feeling of climbing the first hill of a roller coaster. But you'll have it when you're just sitting at your desk at work.
Wow. So not hallucinations?
No, not visual hallucinations, not seeing things visually.
It's just an emotional feeling.
It's just an emotional feeling of extreme unease.
Okay. Okay.
Interesting. How I'm like, how often does this happen to people, and is it easily diagnosed? Because this explains, like, I don't know, 50% of ghost stories.
I know, it's true, actually.
Yeah. I think, and this is based on no research, just sort of anecdotal evidence that I've read about. I think that there is a vast amount of undiagnosed mild head trauma, probably across the entire world, that is responsible for more than just Fortean phenomena, but is also responsible for probably some of the mental situations that people are in the current time. And I do think that a lot of ghost phenomena can be explained away through head trauma and carbon monoxide poisoning in your house.
A topic for another time.
Very much a topic for another time.
Maybe we should like do a I don't know, a series or at least an episode on like common and undiagnosed like minor problems that could make you feel like you're seeing ghosts. I don't know.
I really do want to do something on carbon monoxide poisoning. There was this incredible thread on Reddit a couple of years ago about this guy who was finding, wow, we're going off topic, but about this guy who was finding Post-it notes all over his house with messages written to him. And he was like, I don't know what's going on. Has somebody broken into my house? What is happening? And it turned out that he had a carbon monoxide leak. It wasn't a bad carbon monoxide leak, but it was bad enough that he was blacking out and doing things without knowing it. And so he was leaving himself notes when he was in these blackout phases.
What did the notes say?
I don't remember, but...
Oh my God. Okay,
Yeah.
See, listen. This is why, as much as I love the paranormal and I want it to be true, I'm like... The truth is stranger than fiction.
And where are you going to get things like carbon monoxide leaks? In old fucking houses, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, anyway, he has TLE.
Yes. So Jim
Okay.
Weiner has TLE. He got temporal limbic epilepsy after his fall. And after he was diagnosed with this condition, his doctors recommended that he keep a diary of his seizures and any other strange experiences so he could kind of chart what was going on with him. And so in the process of doing this, Jim started detailing a recurring nightmare that he had. And in this nightmare, he would awake to see strange creatures gathered around his bed. And sometimes he would feel the sensation of being levitated. Other times he felt as if some procedure was being performed on him, particularly around his genitals. And during all of this, he was paralyzed, completely frozen, and unable to move. Longtime listeners will probably recognize this immediately. Jim Weiner was experiencing sleep paralysis. And we've talked about this before, but basically, during your sleep, your unconscious brain shuts down your body, so only your eyes and your breathing are active. And that keeps you from hurting yourself when you're dreaming, especially if your dreams are very active. We've all seen or heard about dogs like chasing things in their sleep and stuff like that. Your brain doesn't want you to do that because you might hurt yourself.
So what happened to him sparked sleep paralysis? We don't think he had it beforehand, maybe?
I don't know that we can actually determine that specifically.
Okay.
Because there's such, the brain is a weird thing. And So it's really hard to say. Eventually, Raymond Fowler will go deeper into Jim's history, and Jim will say that he'd been experiencing this type of thing his entire life.
Okay.
But it's hard to say whether that is true because of how much influence Raymond Fowler and this particular event had on Jim and on the way that he treated his own memory. So it's possible that he didn't, and it was just sort of retconning himself later on, or it's possible that he did. We don't really know.
And when he said he had been experiencing these things, did he mean like that exact stuff, like people hovering on him around his bed, or just like sleep paralysis?
No, he experienced people around him doing something to him. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I mean, if he said he'd been experiencing that for his whole life, then, I mean, never mind. I'm getting too far ahead of ourselves. But if you're experiencing that your whole life, then what does that have to do with your alien abduction when you were like 40,
Well, yeah, I mean, we're getting a little ahead.
Sorry,
but
that's
eventually,
what I said.
yeah. But no, the claim is ultimately going to be that aliens will pick someone and follow them throughout their entire life, abducting them periodically over and over again. So you probably get chosen at an early age that you're going to be one of these abductees.
Got it. And then, he just accidentally roped his friends into it because the aliens decided to come get him when he was with his friends.
Yeah. Yeah. And they were, and even some of them, like his brother, I think, was also experiencing these abductions his entire life too, or so they say.
Okay. Sorry, I'm getting ahead of ourselves. Let's get back to it. So
No, I mean, I'm just going to say the bottom line is that we all want to be special. We all want to be chosen for something. And doesn't this make you just feel so special?
Yeah.
So special.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So now normally when you are coming out of REM sleep, it's a gradual process. Your unconscious brain releases the paralysis over your body. But sometimes when you wake up from REM too quickly, your body is still paralyzed. And that can cause all manner of things to occur. Your conscious brain might panic because it can't move your body. It may try to identify the source of the paralysis and look for threats in the environment. It might even still be dreaming or partially dreaming, and then you may have trouble distinguishing what is real versus what is imagined. And that creates what we call hypnagogic hallucinations. And that happens when your brain is trying to reconcile the input that it's receiving from real sources, dream sources, and fucking up in the process. You may see things that don't exist. You may hear disembodied voices or sounds, that sort of thing. Now, it's very, very likely that sleep paralysis and hypnagogic hallucinations have been the cause not only of a lot of alien abductions, but also of incubi and succubi attacks. In India, it's a witch that causes these attacks. In Slavic culture, it's an elf. In Appalachia, it's the old hag or the boo hag, but it's all the same thing. It's all a result of this sleep paralysis and what happens when your body panics. Because the first thing we do when we're under that panic is our brain starts looking for faces. If it can identify faces, it can say this is either a threat or a friendly, and you end up in like this fight or flight type of response. And so the easiest way to pick out a face is to look for eyes, which will be something that we see time and time again with alien abductions, these big eyes that are so identifiable for all these people. For Jim Weiner, this was all about aliens. And alongside his sleep paralysis, he had this unique condition, TLE, that caused waking hallucinations too, or at least hallucinatory feelings of distress. So he starts journaling these experiences, and he became convinced that these dreams he was experiencing were not imaginary constructs, but were instead long buried memories of some kind of repressed trauma that he was only able to unlock while he was asleep. Unfortunately, Jim was helped along by some medical malpractice, too. Because after hearing about his episodes, one of his doctors recommended that Jim look into the works of Harvard professor John Mack, who had been studying this kind of phenomena. And when I say this kind of phenomena, I don't mean sleep paralysis and hypnagogic hallucinations. John Mack was convinced that these were alien abductions.
This pisses me off so much. This doctor who said go talk to this guy, it should be like his medical license should be taken away.
He didn't say go talk to John Mack. He just said you may want to read about what John Mack has been writing about.
Come on, dude.
But,
But that's so suggestive. Like,
yeah. John Mack, for our listeners who are familiar, will ultimately be the guy who goes to investigate the aerial school phenomena. Katie, I don't know if you're familiar with this or not, but there was a school in Africa where a bunch of children claimed that they saw a UFO and actually saw an alien being come out of it. And John Mack investigates that and then there's a whole issue with Harvard because Harvard is like, what are you doing? This is crazy. And John Mack goes and publishes a paper and all that stuff. So,
I'm with EJ. I'm annoyed. Like, this person is suffering. I mean, at this point, I assume that he has not told his doctor about what happened to his friends and him on the lake.
No, not at all.
So his doctor is just like suggesting this sort of like out of the blue.
Yes. So the chain of events goes, he was diagnosed with TLE, started journaling. When he presented he was going back for checkups and stuff when he presented his journal to the doctor and had what was very clearly hypnagogic hallucinations during sleep paralysis episodes. The doctor was like, whoa, that seems a lot like an alien abduction. You should go read about alien abductions in the literature published by John Mack.
Did he say the word? Like, I know you don't know. I
don't
just
know.
feel like,
Yeah, I don't know.
Did he say alien abductions, or was he like, hey, just go read this researcher? It doesn't really matter, because regardless, he's telling this dude to go read about alien abductions, insinuating that, like, that's what's happening to him. So it's real frustrating.
Also, I'm sure influencing a person who is very curious and probably more than a little distressed about what is going on in their life. If this is, I've had sleep paralysis, and we've talked about it on the podcast before. I understand that it's really freaky. I knew what it was when I was experiencing it, and I sort of, I won't say that I enjoyed it, but I thought it was fascinating because I could figure out what was happening in the process. But if I didn't know what that was, it would be terrifying. In fact, when I was younger, I did have an episode, and it was terrifying to me. And
Did you have hallucinations?
Yes. Both times, yes. Mm-hmm.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. When I was younger, I saw just the head of a woman at the foot of my bed in my grandparents' house. More recently, within the last year or two in this house, I woke up and there was a woman standing in our bedroom door, and I knew somehow instinctively, although this doesn't make any sense, I knew that she was the woman from the basement, whatever that means. And she tried to crawl up in bed, and I got really excited because at that point I knew, and I was like, oh my God, I'm having a sleep paralysis hallucination. Cool. And then she disappeared.
Matt.
Yes.
I would have died both of those times. Literally died. If I was a child and that happened to me, I would be like, well, Mom and Dad, I'm never going to Grandma's again. Just so you're aware.
That was the last time I spent the night there. I never spent the night there again.
No.
I was 10 too. I was really young. I had no idea what was happening. It was the only time I had it there.
I've had sleep paralysis one time. I found out what it was later. There were no hallucinations at all. I just woke up in my dorm room from an afternoon nap, and I couldn't move.
Yeah.
And I was awake. And so I tried to scream, but I couldn't scream. I probably, who knows? Because my roommates weren't there. I was making sound. So it's probable that if someone came in, it would have been when you can't open your mouth, but you're they probably could have heard sound. But yeah, it was weird. It was very freaky. It's never happened to me before or after. Yeah. It was a couple of minutes. I don't know how long, because it feels like a long time when it's happening to you.
Yeah.
Might have been a minute or something. And then it was fine.
Yeah.
Then my whole body was oh, we're awake now.
Oh
okay.
God.
Yeah. So it was creepy, but I did not hallucinate. Thank fuck. Because no.
Well, if you ever do now, just remember and enjoy it. Have fun with it.
Well, that will scare it away, clearly.
Apparently, she was fuck. I can't scare him.
Yeah.
Well, I hope I have the wherewithal in a moment like that to be oh, sleep paralysis, because I don't think I would. What you just described, the woman from the basement crawling into my bed, I would panic, I feel like. If that's the things that people are seeing in sleep paralysis, no wonder people are these stories that you hear on Ghost Hunters and Ghost Adventures, no wonder people are terrified. That's so scary.
Yeah.
That's terrifying. EJ, have you ever had sleep paralysis?
No, never.
No?
Never.
Are you disappointed?
No, I'm happy. and it's weird because I have historically been an extremely anxious person, and I've had insomnia my entire life. I've never been able to sleep, even when I was in my most developmental stages of my life. Sleep did not come to me, which I think has done some damage to my brain, actually, or my growth or something. It can't be good. But seriously, I never had sleep paralysis, though. With all the wonky anxiety and lack of sleep I've had in my life, I don't know how, but no, But I think what disturbs me most about this story is the fact that, like, I understand how, like, if you go to, like, an Eastern medicine healer, someone's going to look at your chakras and give you some crystal treatment or whatever the fuck. And, like, I get the wacky stuff from there. Like, okay. But you go to an actual Western doctor who was, like, trained in real evidence-based medicine, and they're telling you to go talk to some guy who is not based in evidence at all with his findings. It really disturbs me, and it makes me, I know it's not, I like to think it's rare. I don't think that this is a common thing. Although I know a lot of hospitals fund chiropractic treatment within them, which is interesting.
Yes.
I'm going on a tangent, but I'm just upset by that. That bothers me.
Let's talk about how we got here, though, and how we got in the place where a doctor might have recommended this. The early days of alien abduction mythology comes from really two cases. The abduction of Betty and Barney Hill in 1961 and the abduction of Betty Andreasson in 1967. I don't know why the aliens were obsessed with Bettys, but I don't know. The Flintstones were popular at the time. I don't really know.
Betty was a popular name at the time, too.
I guess so, but still, to target the Bettys like that.
Because they would have probably been born in like the late 30s or the 40s, so.
I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it was Elizabeth, and Betty was a common nickname for Elizabeth. Mm-hmm. That's all.
My friends are naming their daughter Betty. It's so
Oh,
cute. It's coming.
nice.
Yeah, it's coming back.
Oh, I
know.
love it. My grandma was Grandma Betty. And
Aw.
so, yeah.
Was
I
she
know.
abducted by aliens?
She had no. Thank God. That woman had enough issues. She had enough things. She had enough things to worry about than an alien abduction.
Did not need to add that on.
No, she didn't need all the anxiety and insomnia I got from her. So
Yeah.
she had enough.
Well, the story of Betty and Barney Hill and their abduction is too broad for us to get into too deeply here, but briefly. During a nighttime drive in New Hampshire, the Hills pulled over and watched strange lights in the sky. Suddenly, they found themselves 35 miles away with no memory of returning to their car or driving that distance. Later, under hypnosis, the pair described identical events, being taken aboard some kind of craft and having a series of invasive tests performed on them by creatures with large black eyes. The story was the first experience to feature these, what we call gray aliens, and would later be the groundwork for decades of alien abduction stories. So, were the Hills victims of alien experimentation? No. And they didn't even agree on what happened either. Not really. Betty's account will end up being the seminal alien abduction story, but Barney actually contradicted a lot of it in his own testimony. Betty was convinced that the light in the sky was a UFO. Barney believed it was a plane. Betty initially described their captors as short guys with black hair and big noses. Barney described the beings being remarkably similar to both the Outer Limits aliens from the episode The Bolero Shield and the shape-shifting creatures from the Twilight Zone's episode Hocus Pocus and Frisbee. It's also important to point out that Betty Hill had been suffering from nightmares for 2 years before she sought out hypnosis. Just like Jim Weiner. She also kept a journal of her nightmares, and it's hard to believe that she would have kept that journal secret from her husband for 2 years. Meaning that the idea that they underwent this hypnosis independently of each other and without prior knowledge or discussion of the events is just a flat-out lie.
Well, I think that even if she didn't share the journal with him, she probably told him about her nightmares.
Sure.
At the very least.
Yeah.
Yeah. And sorry, maybe you said this and I missed it. How long after their supposed abduction were they under hypnosis?
2 years later.
Oh, 2 years. So it was like she kept those journals and then they went. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
That's such a long time. Your brain can make up so many stories in 2 years just from retelling. Like, she's having these nightmares. I agree with EJ, even if he's not reading her journal, she's probably talking to him about things. Mm-hmm. She might be retelling things, and stories develop.
Yeah. And then the other problem is something that we'll be coming back to over and over in this series. The individuals who conducted the hypnosis and the research on the Hills. Because, so just after the event, the Hills reported mysterious lights in the sky to the National Investigations Committee on Aerial Phenomena, or NICAP. And we talked about NICAP before, but it was all started by Major Donald Kehoe and Thomas Townsend Brown, and was kind of the precursor to the Mutual UFO Network, MUFON. Their function was to be a civilian-based group that logged and reported anomalous phenomena in the sky, kind of like the non-military arm of Project Blue Book. In fact, NICAP's findings were discussed during the Condon Committee's 1968 review, which ultimately determined that Project Blue Book and the 2 decades of aerial phenomena that they collected had provided nothing of value to the U.S. military intelligence. But for the Hills, 7 years after the Condon Committee's report, deep in the lore of flying saucers and aliens, there's this guy named Walter Webb of NICAP, and he interviewed the Hills about their experience. Follow-up interviews reinforced this idea that things might have been more significant than just a simple airplane in the night sky. And they started to build this story together, Walter Webb and the Hills. There's a real danger when working with memories to keep things subjective. Because without documentation, an event is only logged in human memory, and it can very easily become modified by the retelling, right? We tend to think of our brains as like filing cabinets, where you can just record things, stash them away, always accessible, always undamaged. And memory regression hypnotists like to pretend that sometimes these drawers get locked. And if you can just find the key or you can pick the lock, you can access all these memories that were hidden away that you couldn't access normally. But the truth is, our memories are very easily malleable. We've talked about this on the podcast before. Dr. Elizabeth Loftus, cognitive psychologist, compares our memories more to Wikipedia pages and says, many people believe that memory works like a recording device. You record information and then you can play it back when you want to answer questions or identify images. But decades of work in psychology has shown that this just isn't the case. Our memories are constructive. They're reconstructive. Memory works a little bit more like a Wikipedia page. You can go in there and you can change it, but so can other people. And so can time, so can other influences, like watching some sci-fi TV shows during the 2 years between your sighting of lights in the sky and the time that you reported. So now you have a couple who were on a late night road trip, saw some lights in the sky, lost some time during driving. That's not really that crazy, right? They discussed their sighting with a prominent UFO investigator who was very interested in the event, giving it even more weight. Betty started having nightmares and spent 2 years recording them, building a narrative around them, then went under hypnosis and simply recited the story that she had created across 2 years through cultural influences.
There is a phenomenon that I don't know the name of, but it's a thing where if you're driving on if you have your daily commute and you're going from point A to point B and you do it every day and you know it very well, you will start your car and drive, and then you will find yourself at the office and you will not remember getting from point A to point B. It's a very common phenomenon. And I think that depending upon how normalized that road trip was, like maybe they did it a lot, maybe not, I have no idea, but that is a thing that can happen.
I don't think it even needs to be something you do all the time. I have many experiences of like being on a highway, driving somewhere, and realize that like I can't remember seeing anything out my windshield for like the last like 10 minutes because I've just been in my thoughts thinking about things or whatever. It doesn't even have to be common. And like, I'm not saying that that's what happened to them on that road trip where they don't remember, but like, I think we undercredit the amount that we forget every day about the shit that we do. We forget so much shit every day. We do so much stuff without thinking about it, without logging it, without clocking it, because you can't. It's like, that's the point of habit, right? Because like, if you had to like actively think and decide about every single thing that you have to do every day, it would just like overwhelm you within 2 seconds.
Yeah, I think about like police interrogations and how they're asking like somebody like what they did like a couple of days ago. And I feel like I think the idea is that it's more suspicious if they know exactly what they were doing and they can say, oh yes, I had strawberry pancakes and bacon. I definitely did. And because you have to have that full story because you definitely did not kill your wife. Like, you know that you didn't kill your wife. You can't say, oh, I don't know what I had for breakfast because that seems suspicious. But actually, it's quite normal to not know what you had for breakfast 2 days ago or where you went at 3:00 p.m. Like, you don't remember that shit.
Because it all blends together. Yeah. So, especially if you were having like a normal day or a normal week. Like,
Totally.
I'm like, right now, I'm just trying to be like, okay, could I name everything I had for breakfast last week? And I'm like already like, oh shit, I'm going to have to really think about that.
Yeah. Yeah. Unless you're weird. And like me, I have the same meal, all 3 meals, like almost every day. Like I have the same thing. So I can say, but like most people like don't, I think.
The thing is, I usually do have the same breakfast, but I didn't this week because I was sick. So now I'm like, okay, what did I do? I know I ate soup for breakfast a lot of mornings.
Oh, wow.
You ate soup for breakfast?
Yeah, because I was like, all I wanted was like brothy things.
Oh man, that must have been a bad sickness.
Yeah.
Ooh.
Anyway, the point is, it's very easy to forget shit. Yeah. And I think back to what you were saying, Matt, people are suggestible and like to think that you're not and that your memories are not like prone to suggestion. I mean, even just think about it in like a non-alien abduction kind of way. Like you and your friends, we've all had this experience. You go out with your friends the night before, you go to brunch the next day, you're dissecting what happened and you're like, this is what happened. And like, you know, so-and-so did this and then this and then this. And the other person's like, no. This like before that or in between here, in between that. And then like your memory becomes the like amalgamation of like you all putting your stories and your thoughts together, right? Because your memory becomes changed by everything that you heard and trusted people suggesting things to you or telling you bits of information that you didn't know. And yeah, I mean, we've all done that.
Absolutely. By the way, the psychologist who conducted the Hill's hypnosis sessions concluded that it was what they called a psychological aberration. Basically, an invented trauma that the Hills, or at least Betty, believed was real. However, the Hills' effect on the UFO community was way too powerful to ignore. NICAP and later MUFON picked up the threads of that story and ran with them, kind of like a kid with scissors. By the early 70s, the idea wasn't so much that we were being observed by creatures from another world. They were actually here to attack us, they were going to scoop us up, and they were going to poke and prod us. And the government, meaning the Condon Committee, thought that there was nothing to it. And so that was the cultural state of UFO research when a brand new abductee entered the picture, Betty Andreasson. Now, she claimed that she had been abducted by a group of small beings who ran a series of medical procedures on her. The beings wore pants, long-sleeve shirts, and heavy boots. They could allegedly levitate and didn't walk, but just floated around. And they could also move through her walls at will. They didn't need to use doors. They could just float into her house.
Why were they wearing boots if they didn't need to walk?
I don't
EJ,
know.
that's exactly the question I had. I was like, if they can levitate, why do they have heavy boots on?
Maybe they were levitating and the boots kept them from levitating too high and smacking into the ceiling.
Maybe they were levitation boots.
Maybe they were.
Well, because I was thinking, if they're just protecting your feet, they could just be like cloth covering. They don't need to be like workman boots or something.
Yeah, unless the boots powered their levitation, which
Sure.
okay, I'll give them that.
That will not be the last hole in this story.
What?
Come on.
When Betty was abducted, she was floated. They caused her to float and phased her through the solid wall of her house and out into their spaceship. On the spaceship, she was lucky enough to meet the aliens' leader, whose name was Quazga, who gave her a religious text from their culture. And in return, Betty Andreasson, a very devout Christian, gave Quazga a Bible.
Wait, so like when she's getting floated out of her room to the spaceship, she's like, oop, let me just snatch this off my bookshelf on the way out.
Yeah.
Well, so this was not...
What forethought in the name of Jesus?
No, this was not one abduction. This was a series of abductions that she experienced.
okay.
I'm sure at some point they showed up and they were like, Betty, it's time for your 4:00. And she was like, well, okay, let me get my Bible because Quazza gave me his religious text and I want to give him one back.
Yeah, save his soul.
They were essentially both missionaries. See, allegedly the aliens wanted her to be a missionary for them on Earth because they claimed that humankind was on a path towards self-destruction and Betty Andreasson was the chosen one who was going to bring the aliens' message of peace and love to humanity.
Again, with the chosen ones, with the special people. Mm-hmm. Also, that's kind of an age-old concept with aliens, too. It's like with...
Adamski?
Thank you,
Yeah.
Adamski.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, George Adamski originally had that. And a lot of that came from the day the Earth stood still in the 1950s. That was an idea in this post-World War II, post-atomic bomb world that was like, hey, you have incredible destructive power. Maybe you shouldn't use it. But it's really unfortunate that Betty Andreasson was the chosen one because following her abduction in 1967, she lost the religious book that she had been given and forgot about the whole thing for a decade.
How does that happen?
Yeah.
I get the losing the book. People can be very forgetful. But when it comes to forgetting something like that...
I know.
Yeah.
Just a months-long communication with alien beings. And then I'm like, oopsies.
Oops.
Slipped my mind.
Well, she remembered it again in 1977, the first time she thought of aliens in 10 years. 1977, also the same year that Close Encounters of the Third Kind came out. Mm-hmm. After Betty Andreasson watched that movie and read some articles about UFOs, she suddenly remembered that there were fragments of something similar that happened to her a decade earlier. Much like the Hills, Andreasson contacted MUFON to report her case. The organization assigned researcher Raymond Fowler to this case. Born in Salem, Massachusetts in 1933, Fowler was considered one of the preeminent authorities on UFOs at the time. He had served in the U.S. Air Force during the Korean War. He joined NICAP in the late 1950s. By day, he worked as an engineer at the General Telephone and Electronics Company. So he's kind of a technical guy. By the mid-1960s, he would be one of the contributors to NICAP's report to Congress that formed the backbone of the Condon Committee. When they were dismissed, Fowler felt betrayed by the government, and he felt like they refused to take UFOs seriously because they had collected all of this research, and everyone was like, we're not going to worry about it. As NICAP floundered in the wake of the Condon Committee's vote, Fowler published 2 books, Interplanetary Visitors and Casebook of a UFO Investigator. By the late 1970s, he had shifted to working with MUFON and the Center for UFO Studies, where he worked very closely with legendary ufologist J. Allen Hynek. This is like having Raymond Fowler on the Betty Andreasson case is kind of like having Aaron Rodgers, the Pittsburgh Steelers quarterback and conspiracy theorist, coaching your kid's elementary school football team. He brought this wealth of knowledge and research. He was an authority, and also his presence there elevated that case. Fowler interviewed Andreasson and conducted a series of hypnotic regressions on her. During these, Fowler and Andreasson built the story of her abduction, which Fowler published in the Andreasson Affair in 1979. His hypnotic regression sessions with Betty were so extensive that one book wouldn't cover it all, and so he published 2 sequels, the Andreasson Affair Phase 2 and The Watchers. Now, I'm not entirely sure why he felt that he was qualified to perform hypnotic memory regression on Betty Andreasson. I've done some pretty extensive research on his background, and I found an article from the Salem Digest in 2017 that notes that he got a Bachelor of Arts and graduated magna cum laude from Gordon College. Now, psychology is an art, so maybe his arts degree was a psychology degree. But when he enlisted in the Air Force, he served as an electronic espionage specialist, which doesn't seem like the kind of role a psychologist would have. His occupation later in life revolved around engineering, not psychology, which makes me think that he was either a self-trained hypnotist or learned it secondhand from his connections at MUFON. Assisting in these sessions was David Webb, a solar physicist and MUFON member. And again, I don't know why a solar physicist considered himself qualified to go rooting around in somebody's memory. But this speaks to the continual problem that NICAP and MUFON have. Rather than sending out investigators who are qualified in the fields that actually need investigation, they sent out investigators who were familiar with UFO mythology. They were not trained psychologists. They were flying saucer fanciers who had their own agenda and wanted so badly to prove that aliens were real. On top of all of this, Fowler believed that he had been abducted by aliens himself and was driven to prove that his own experiences were genuine. And so poor Betty Andreasson became more than just a test subject for him. She was the hook on which he was hanging his entire worldview.
I wonder if it was that MUFON couldn't get experts, subject matter experts, or if subject matter experts tried to be a part of it, but their skepticism was like a bummer and they were just kicked out. Like, I don't know what it is, but where are they? Like, they really should be there.
I don't know. By the 1970s, like, hypnotic memory regression was this really popular pop psychology type of thing that a lot of people were doing. And at some point during the 70s, we'll talk about it a little later, but at some point during the 70s, they even talked about how it was not useful for alien abductions because you were implanting memories. Like, we knew how bad it was kind of from the beginning. But I think it gave them the results that they wanted, and so they kept using it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It's a little bit like ghost hunting, that you have, I don't know, you see ghost hunters and they're in there with all their like random gadgets and shit, and it doesn't matter if it doesn't make any sense at all. Like, if we have no evidence that ghosts manipulate EMF fields, which we don't. If you have an EMF meter and you take it in an old house and it spikes, you're like, oh, that's a ghost. Mm-hmm. You use it because it gives you the results that you want.
Mm-hmm.
I just to your point about like memory regression, like, I was reading a paper by Elizabeth Loftus before we signed on, and it seems like during the 90s there was like a huge sort of surge, and this what we're talking about is a little bit before that, but there was this huge surge of memory regression as being this sort of untapped resource for people to remember traumatic things that had happened to them. Mm-hmm. And I think you're right. Like, if it's getting you what you want, and it seems like this guy in this instance had a lot of conflicts of interest. Like, he wanted to justify his own feelings about his own supposed experiences on top of wanting evidence for, MUFON and these organizations. And so it's just so easy to become biased toward the outcome that you want.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's the thing. They sat down, Raymond Fowler, David Webb sat down with these people and put them into hypnotic memory regression and asked them questions about their abductions with the assumption that they had been abducted, not with the assumption, they shouldn't have had any assumption at all, really, but they assumed that these people had been abducted by aliens, and they went looking for evidence that they had been abducted by aliens. They wanted things to support this hypothesis. You can see how this is a huge problem. Hypnotic memory regression. So Katie, you were reading about the 90s. Did you read about the mall experiment that Elizabeth Loftus did?
No, I haven't read about that.
Well, I know we've talked about this before too, but she actually implanted false memories in adults that they had been lost in the mall as a child.
Right.
And, that's right.
Yeah, and they were false. They never existed, but she was able to influence all of these adults to have the same memory.
What did she do after she gave them that memory? Was she then like, that's not true? Because that would fucking throw you off.
Yeah, I know. So this was during the 90s, and I know that there was a little bit of like, not exactly backlash, but...
There was less rigor about what kind of experiments you could get approved.
Yeah, it was a little fast and loose. Yeah,
it's like the Stanford prison experiment. They learned a lot. Should it have happened? No.
Yeah.
But I mean, it's not like she implanted something super traumatic. I mean,
Right.
she picked the most innocuous memory that could happen. Like, you got lost in the store. Like, okay.
But she did have people breaking down and really, really upset, because that was one of the things that she wanted to point out, is that conjuring up emotions and moments of distress, it does not mean that you're dealing with an authentic memory.
Right. Like conjuring up the fact that they were a terrified little kid lost in the mall and they were feeling really scared and sad. It's like, well, yeah, but that didn't happen to them.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And that's what Raymond Fowler was doing with Betty Andreasson. So through like this subtle suggestion and unintentional, I do think it was unintentional guidance during hypnosis, he built a false memory of abduction for her, which she then confirmed by her responses. So I have this transcript from the hypnosis sessions that, EJ, I want to read with you.
Yes.
Where Betty talks about strange spherical objects that her captors held. EJ, do you want to read Betty or do you want to read Raymond Fowler?
I think you should be Betty.
Okay, sounds good.
You told us about these white balls. Could you show us how big the balls were?
There were two of them, and one in the back was holding it just like this. He was holding the smaller one.
The little one, maybe 4 or 5 inches in diameter?
About that size.
Did they glow?
It was lighted, but the light stayed within itself.
Did it look like metal or glass?
Glass. It looked like glass. Notice how the interviewer led her responses. Mm-hmm. They said,
"Hey, asking her what size this
exactly
what the small one, when he was like, was it 4 or 5 inches? I'm like, what the fuck are you talking about? If it's small, you ask her, how big was it? Would you say? Like,
yeah. Or then he's like, did they glow? Because that inspires her to think about a glowing ball in their hands, right?
Yeah.
And then he asked metal or glass, implying that this was a binary choice. They couldn't have been made of plastic. They couldn't have been made of rubber. They couldn't have been made of some space age material.
Or
right?
yes, I would imagine that you might say something like, if you had not been led to answer that question, you might say something like, it wasn't very clear to me what they were made of. It looked kind of like glass, but it seemed too shimmery to be that, or something like that. That would be like a more interesting, realistic answer for someone. Yeah.
Right. But he just says, did it look like metal or glass? And she says, she has two things to pick from. She says, glass. Just like that.
Well, this is something that I think they really tell you not to do in police interrogations. Like,
Yeah.
do not do this shit.
Yeah.
It's like textbook don't do.
100% you don't do that.
Yeah.
Like, no, because you want the person. I feel like there's a couple of reasons you wouldn't want them to do that. Like, you want the person to describe it for themselves, right? To get the truest, as close to their truest thought about it. And secondly, like in an investigation, if they're lying, you want them to make up the lie all by their little selves. You don't want to like insert yourself into that because potentially later they won't say the same thing, right? Because they won't remember what they said or whatever. So dumb. Okay, let's keep going.
Well, all right, EJ, let's read this other transcript here.
Okay. Why did they pick you?
It was a book of initiation, of mysteries of everything that is, because of things I have gone through and yet have stood fast.
Were you supposed to study it?
I was supposed to look at it and grasp as much as I could possibly grasp for the future.
Did you look at the cover to see if there is any symbol on the cover?
There's something there. What is it? It's in the very center. It's very thin. Thin gold. It looks Egyptian.
Are there pictures in the blue book, illustrations, or is there only writing?
No, there are diamonds with a dot in the middle. There's something like a staff and arrows. There's something that is on an angle, and it's a rectangle on a side, and it goes out.
And seen.
Excellent. Notice how leading these questions are.
They continue. Like, instead of, okay, they gave you a book. Tell me about the book.
Yeah, describe the book.
What does it look like?
Yeah, it's, was there a symbol on the cover? Are there illustrations? Subtle suggestions for her to give responses to. Unaware of his own biases, Fowler published these transcripts and his conclusions in his books. The Andreasson abductions became a major talking point in ufology. Many researchers still, to this day, consider it one of the most important cases of alien abduction. And it almost certainly influenced future abductees like Whitley Strieber. We've talked about him before, but Strieber was a fiction writer who claimed to be the victim of alien abduction around the mid-1980s. And he wrote up his own experiences in his 1987 book, Communion, which honestly echoed many of Andreasson's themes. The chosen person, again, delivering a religiously adjacent message of peace, juxtaposed by these invasive experiments and hypnagogic hallucinatory experiences. Strieber also underwent hypnotic memory regression from a contemporary of Bud Hopkins, who himself was a contemporary of Raymond Fowler. Hopkins was also associated with MUFON, and he was present at Strieber's hypnosis sessions. He also performed hypnosis on multiple alleged abductees. So it's no surprise that all of these guys were getting the same answers from Strieber that Fowler was getting from Andreasson, and that they started to get from all of their experiments. They were using the same flawed methods based off the same flawed data sets. In fact, by the time Hopkins published his own book on alien abductions in 1987 called Intruders, he was just looking for similarities in these stories. He wasn't even doing research anymore. He was just seeking out confirmation of MUFON's theories. But when Jim Weiner picked up Whitley Strieber's Communion, he connected his own experiences to it immediately. And why not, right? He's been experiencing sleep paralysis, just like Strieber, just like Andreasson, just like the Hills, or at least Betty Hill. After reading their experiences, Jim remembered the strange lights he saw in the sky during his camping trip in the Allagash Wilderness waterway, and connected the dots for himself. That light was a UFO. He'd been abducted, experimented on, and dropped off. That explained the missing time. That explained these hallucinations that now he was convinced weren't hallucinations. They were repressed memories. But if all this was true, that meant that there were 3 other people who could confirm his story, his camping companions, right? So Jim resolved to get all 4 of them to meet with Raymond Fowler in the hopes of getting to the bottom of this experience. And we will talk about their hypnosis sessions with the legendary Raymond Fowler on our next episode.
I'm very excited to see how he leads them to this conclusion.
And all of them.
It's also really fascinating, and we'll talk about it next time, but it's really fascinating to see the difference between Jim, who is diehard into the aliens, into the abduction, balls to the wall, and then some of the other guys who are not, and what their experiences are like.
Yeah, because my question was going to be, I mean, I have so many questions, and like this will be for next time, so maybe I'll save them. But like, even with someone leading you, I imagine that it's challenging to get, there was 4 of them, 3 of them, or 4 of them, I forget. 4 of them. 4 people to tell a similar experience of the same situation to the accuracy that you would want to say like, oh, wow, this wasn't an alien abduction and not we saw a comet in a lake, you know?
Right.
Like,
right.
I just feel like it's not like there was so much going on. It's not like you had 4 people at a party where you could say like, oh, you could have had very different experiences of that night. You were all on a boat in a lake.
And I'm sure that you're all kind of thinking he's going to set them up and they're going to say, oh, I saw an alien head and that's the end. But oh no, we're going to build whole fucking scenarios. We are going to build scenes next time.
Excellent. Did all these guys believe it to the same level?
No.
Okay.
No, they did not. And that will ultimately be a schism point for the friendship of the Allagash Four.
It's interesting because I think that you hear, I mean, personally, I didn't hear that a whole lot with the Hills. Like, I didn't know until you told me that Barney's account diverged greatly from Betty's, and especially
almost immediately.
Yeah, and like when Barney died, he said that it was a plane. Like before he died, he was like, "Nah, it was just a plane." And then Betty, in her grief, I think, just spiraled and spiraled without him in her life, and got more and more into this whole alien idea. And you're the one that said that the MUFON people like booed her off the stage toward the end of her life.
Yeah, that's a whole.
That's so sad.
I hate
it's
that.
a big.
I know.
Yeah, it's a big kind of tangent, but yeah. So she became obsessed, and it became like a part of her personality that she was this abductee, and she started taking pictures of all kinds of shit. Like she took pictures of stars, she took pictures of even like street lights and claimed that they were UFOs and stuff, and then she presented it at this MUFON conference, and everybody saw through all of it, and they booed her off stage, and that was like the end of the Betty Hill as being this prominent alien abduction candidate. And then it's fascinating because that was like at some point during the 80s, I want to say, maybe the late 70s or the early 80s. And then her story kind of got forgotten about and then rediscovered in the mid 90s with, you know, the X-Files and all of that stuff. And there had been enough time that people forgot that she became this pariah in the community. And when they rediscovered it, they were then like, oh, wow, this is all legitimate. And nobody talked about the fact that she kind of fell off in the end.
It's very sad. And so I guess it's just that this is all just to say that it's very interesting to me to learn how stories diverge and how, you know, the Hills were not steadfast in their story.
Right.
And so I'm very curious to hear about what the Allagash Four, how that diverges and how that develops as well. So,
Well, thank you all so much for listening and coming along on this journey into the alien side of things. If you are feeling generous, head over to slayingmonsterspodcast.com, click on the Support Us button at the top of the page, and consider leaving a donation or becoming one of our supporters there. And while you're over there, check out our merch store too. Got some pretty cool things that you can wear and show your support of the podcast. And yeah, until next time, everybody be safe out there.
thanks for listening.
Bye.
Thanks for listening to Slaying Monsters, the 40 in History podcast. If you like the podcast, there's a couple ways you can show your support. You can tell your friends, you can leave us a rating and review on your podcast platform, or you can head over to slayingmonsterspodcast.com and click on the Support Us button to leave a donation. For questions, suggestions, and other feedback, reach out to us, slayingmonsterspodcast@gmail.com, and stay up to date by following us on socials at Slaying Monsters Podcast. Your support helps us grow, and we are truly grateful to have our listeners and community.